Hello everyone, and welcome to Economics Pat02. In this particular video, I will be doing an analysis at essentially how long will it take to pay back the Canadian national deficit of $55.3 billion. In order to do so, I'm going to be teaching a little bit of economics, and then we will do the equation together. Now, in finances, there is such a thing as the rule of 72, which means, as an example, in order to generate or double a particular sum, if I multiply it by 72, and then I essentially can find how much time it will take for that lump sum to double according to its interest rate of being 7.2%. You can actively find that at 7.2% interest as an investment, if you multiply 7.2% and then essentially rise, you would find that in order to double an investment of, say, $100,000 at 7.2% interest rate, it would exactly take 7.2 years in order for said investment to double in its interest wealth generated. And so, in this particular calculation, I'm going to do some quick math off the top of my head. 55.3 billion divided by 72 at 3%, we essentially arrive at $2.304 billion simply just in debt we will have to pay back in per year, not counting the $750 million just in interest charges at 3% interest rate. And ultimately, how long are we going to have to pay this debt back for if we maintain a steady economy, meaning breaking even at this particular point, which if we make money, we might pay it back quicker. But if we're simply breaking even as a Canadian society, it would essentially take 24 years of paying $2.304 billion just in the actual payback amount as a yearly payment. On top, added another $750 million just in interest debt charges. So essentially we would have to pay back $3 billion a year for 24 years to break even. That is not including possibly generating money as a country. Now that all sounds awful lot expensive, but in this particular topic, we know Mr. Mark Carney is an economic genius. And knowing he is an economic genius, well, Mr. Carney, what economics, or specifically what industries, such as oil and gas, lumber, what industries do we specifically intend on utilizing in order to create a $3 billion revenue simply to pay back debt? Not to get money into our country, but with simply $3 billion a year going to the bank, not to Canadian folks or our economy, we would essentially find that if we wish to live a healthy life as a Canadian people, the essential struggle you have put as a stressor on the backs of your Canadian folks, your Canadian citizens, the Canadian working man and woman, we essentially find that in order for all of us to essentially arrive to a somewhat healthy system where Canadians are not struggling to afford the price of living, such as housing costs, the cost of consumer goods, such as groceries, and the cost of fuel in order to drive to work, which all of these things all together, drumroll please, equals Canada is going to essentially go to be a third world country at this particular point. Is that necessarily a true fact? No, but we don't have the resources to sustain our lifestyles as Canadians anymore. We have gone broke. And because Canadians are now broke, what can we do from here? Well, as an incentive, as I've just spoken about the 72 rule, if you're a Canadian seeking to specifically create money for yourself, I would suggest you begin a savings account at a 7.2% interest rate, which at 7.2% interest rate, if you were to invest, say, $10,000, you would find in 7.2 years at 7.2% interest rate, you would then have made $20,000 in doubling your money. Imagine if you can actively put more money into a savings account, which you yourself will then maintain doubling your money the more you invest in yourself. Thank you.